Welcome to the August 28th Fire Connect-a-thon prep session for the C-CDA Implementation-a-thon track. I am Lisa Nelson, your track lead, and today we are going to be covering a recap of the resources and the plan for Connect-a-thon for folks maybe who haven't joined us previously. And then we will talk about some updates on topics that we've discussed in previous prep sessions. I have a little bit of an update for you on the plan for sample document generation and an update on the workflow workshop that we're going to be running. And then we'll cover today's specific topics. Here's an overview of where we are in preparation for the implementation-a-thon. We're going to be covering section time range today, talking about the assertion of different template conformances, narrative text linking, something called multi-content views, and some discussion topics around how to consistently represent time, some of the challenges we see there. And I'll also get into these red pieces here that I have a little bit of an update around some of the topics we covered previously. At this point, I will just mention, because I don't think I have it on a subsequent slide, that I have been sending out, I won't call them hounding messages, but I'll just call them pleasant reminders that we really want to engage with folks that are coming to Connect-a-thon prepared to be document creators. I'm trying to make sure that we have the infrastructure set up to do a better job of collecting the samples that people are bringing and collecting while we test some of this capability. And so if you're planning to be at Connect-a-thon, or if you're not going to be at Connect-a-thon, but your company is in a position of providing some documents that you'd like to supply for implementers to consume, then if you could please just RSVP to me. I think I have my email on other slides that you can find it easily enough, lnelson@max.md. We are trying to get some confirmation of who our content creators are going to be. By way of recap, these are critical links for you to help your participation at and preparation for participating at the implementation-a-thon. The most important link, it's the place to go when you need to connect with everything else, and that is our Confluence site on HL7's Confluence area. There is an CDA implementation-a-thon space that takes you to everything that's going on with the implementation-a-thon in Atlanta. And it also can take you to backlinks to some of the previous implementation-a-thons if it helps you to look around at some of the work that we've done in previous Connect-a-thons. There also is a Dropbox site that's been set up, and I'm going to show you some resources there later on during the presentation today so that you can familiarize yourself with what's available there. We have a Zulip chat stream that has topics associated with this particular Connect-a-thon. And I'll be mentioning a couple of things that you want to access there on that Zulip chat stream. It might not be that active all the time. We're trying to promote the idea that people would get used to asking questions and interacting with each other with the C-CDA community through this stream. But we definitely will be expecting a lot of activity during the Connect-a-thon. And if you are not able to join us in Atlanta, you may just want to keep an eye on what's going on in that stream as a way of participating remotely. There's a Google Drive where we have the attendance sheet and a couple other documents that people can access interactively during the Connect-a-thon. We have some resources around understanding the U.S. core data for interoperability, a prime focus of the implementation-a-thon, and a link to the ONC scorecard where you can test your documents against not only these the base schema and specification requirements. Oh, somebody just joined that's causing some reverb, so if you can mute yourself, that would be helpful. But also it gives you a sense of some of the best practice advice that's out there and how your documents compare to that. We have links to the resources that are available for people who want to dig in and understand the mappings between C-CDA and FHIR STU4. And we have some sample transforms that may be helpful. They're sort of specific to the care plan space, but they have some general use as well. And if you're interested in experimenting with some of that, we've got resources for that. One of the main goals of the Connect-a-thon this time is to solidify and continue to, form consensus and get more consistency around the representation of some of these core data elements that have been identified as critical for interoperability. And so we hope that everybody will be familiar with the data classes and the data elements that are being defined here by the Office of the National Coordinator. And this slide just shows you some of the clinical note types that have been identified that we're going to be experimenting with, as well as the other data elements like medications and patient demographics and problems. This is a nice infographic that expands that whole space of what US CDI is about, and many of these data elements are available for exchange in CDA documents, and so this is a big focus for us at this implementation-a-thon. We also have a new resource that's available out in that Google Docs folder. You can take a sneak peek at it right now as you're preparing to move yourself, shift your company from just thinking about C-CD documents, continuity of care documents, one type of consolidated CDA document, and you want to compare how similar or different is that to some of the other types of documents and what kind of content is present in those encounter summaries versus the patient summary, CCD. This document is a one-pager, 2 sides, and it gives you a real nice view. The documents are listed across the top here, different exchange document types. It's got this first area is about the header areas, and then the back side is about the body of the structured documents. And there's a few important resources that you can link to that are described in this other area on the front page here. So do a little promotion to say this could be a helpful document to look at as you're preparing to come to implementation-a-thon. We have a very full 2-day agenda. We run it in quarters, and one of the big things that's different this time is we're trying to shift the focus to give us more time on comparing across documents that are created by different content creators and look at where we have inconsistencies and where we can help drive more consistent representation of the US CDI data elements. So on both days, we have doubled up Q2 and Q3 with lunch in the middle so that you all implementers have a little bit longer time block to be focusing on the encounter documents that we're going to be looking at on Saturday, and the provenance information, author, performer, associated timestamps, as well as some of these new templates around clinical notes within the document and representation of care team and care team members. So we are hoping that this change will give us a little bit more time. It's one of the adjustments we're making from last time. We'll still have our discussions in the Q1 and the Q4 timeframe to get into some of the newer areas where people are experimenting, but then we have solid blocks in the middle to work on the implementer exchange of these documents and established templates. To that end, we are providing greater guidance early around a patient story and a scenario that all implementers can use this same setup so that our documents will be more comparable. We've got a sample patient scenario out there. I'm putting the final touches on, working with the clinicians on FHIR group to finalize a little bit of the clinical details in the story about Ted Levin, who is a 76-year-old guy from the south side of Chicago, and he's got a history of diabetes. He's had an amputation of his left foot 5 years ago. He's experiencing some issues. He's got a prosthetic device. We've really constructed a scenario that helps us exercise a lot of things that are going on in the US CDI, as well as change over time. So this is a comprehensive story that covers a couple year span of time. And we've picked out 2 key spots within this story to focus our examples around. So we'll be focusing in on generating an encounter summary, or what Linda Michelson likes to call an encounter-oriented C-CD that is generated or relevant right after a visit with his primary care physician for his annual exam on March 5th, 2018. We've got some specific exercises or challenges to try and represent within those documents, along with a little bit of a bonus activity to create a referral note that is called for in this scenario. And then the second spot is a point in time a little over or about a year later, after there's some issues going on with Ted and some change has happened. So you'll see the opportunity for exercising what do these documents look like over time as a person's problem list or medications change. He's got an address change. He goes from living on his own to living with his son, and even some changes in his social history. So we'll be exercising care teams and section time range and clinical notes in the second part of the example, and looking at some of the challenges around information changing over time. And our bonus activity on the second day will be exploring what does that look like in terms of information that's represented in the author time, talk about persistent IDs and how IDs might be used to help that and help us really get into a deeper conversation around basic provenance, a new template that's being introduced right now. So that's what's new. I wanted to update that and just let you know this document is out in the Dropbox area. This is my moment when I want to show you Dropbox so that you get a feel for some of the resources that we are putting out there. And here's what the Dropbox folder has in it. There's a resources area that that you can dig into. I've got a map of CDA. This is the RMIM diagram. We've got information on the US CDI. I pulled some documentation together for you if you don't want to have to fish around. We've got the latest and the previous companion guide versions there, the VSAC release package, latest one. We've also got the patient story. That is the materializing information. That's where you go on August 30th to pick up the final version of that. A whole bunch of sample files that might be helpful to you to take a look at. Some information handouts for the workflow workshop, the mapping information I talked about before, and the transforms, a few IHE profiles that we're going to be taking a look at, some information about certification, and some information that comes to us from the Health Story Project. So this is a very rich area on Dropbox right now. And then for content creators, I've started to create a set of folders that you can use on Dropbox to put samples that you're creating now so that you can save time while you're at Connectathon, or if it's easier for you to work with demo systems that you have access to today leading up to coming to Atlanta, that helps deal with a challenge we talked about last week where some folks can't bring their demo systems with them. You could get a hold of the patient scenario, work on generating your samples, and drop them up in Dropbox ahead of coming to Atlanta, and then use those quarters to really interact with others who are consuming your documents and also comparing across different samples to see where things are the same or different. That's all about Dropbox. back here, I wanted to mention that I talked about it last week, we are planning a Q5 session for folks that want to dig into care plan a little bit more and talk about the mapping between consolidated CDA and FHIR. So I mentioned that. Here's my email address if you need it. Probably just drop that really quick. Also in, or Dave, can you put that in the chat for me? Just so people have it in case they want to use that, to confirm for me that you are interested and you're going to be creating documents. Most people come ready to be content consumers, but if we don't have content creators, it makes the implementation Thon less effective. We will be pushing content consumers to try and move beyond just viewing documents. I say here it's not a focus. Obviously, it's always a focus, but I'm really trying to encourage people to move beyond that to a place where maybe they can come with examples of how you have systems that can consume a document and attach it to a patient record. That's what document import is all about. Or take us a little bit further and demonstrate how sections of information may be imported into your system and used in that new context. Or even deeper at the discrete data level where you might be reconciling and importing actual discrete data to be used in your consuming system. So to be, if you come ready to do that, there's definitely going to be bonus points. I don't know, maybe candy bars or something like that to go along with that. The update on the workflow workshop that we talked about last week is I wanted to mention not only that there's some handouts that you can use, we're going to workshop describe how different systems are able to create documents and consume them. What are the steps inside your system? Not just looking at the data that's flowing between, but what are the steps that really take place inside your system to get to the point of creating a document or to follow through with consuming a document and getting it absorbed into your EHR. What is the industry best practice? What's really relevant and possible? And today we're going to be focusing on that for one quarter. I created 2 surveys, and they're out on the Zulip channel. So if you go to, let's see if I brought up that Zulip site. I don't think I did. Let me see if I can just do that real quick. Out on Zulip, there are 2 surveys that you can take that are, one is about content creation capabilities, and one is about content consumption capabilities. And so far, 10 EHRs have participated in the content creation, and nobody has yet participated in the content consumption part. So if you could take a couple of minutes and do those surveys before we get to Connect-a-thon, I'll be able to share some results at the Connect-a-thon, and we can take a look at that as part of our workshop as well. Here's what Zulip looks like, chat.fire.org. The way you get to the stream for C-CDA is on this little gear tool right here. You click on that, and it allows you to add this C-CDA stream to your watched streams. And then in the more topics area, the C-CDA IAT 2019-09 in Atlanta is a place where you've got the thread that's specific to our work there. And these 2 surveys are posted. So you've got a link to, here's the link to the patient scenario, and here's a link to the SurveyMonkey survey that's about document consumption. And up here is the one that was about document creation. So just click on that, couple of minutes, you can get through it. It's only 10 or 12 questions, pretty easy to take part in that.
Lisa?
Yes.
It's Rachel. For Dropbox, it seems we might not have access to the 2019 information yet. Will that invite go out soon?
I think it is set up so that you just need the link to the Dropbox, and everybody that has that link then has access to it. So I think
is
I
the
put
link
that on
Zulip, or
I think it's a link on Zulip, but if it's not there yet, Rochelle, thanks for asking about that. I'll make sure that we get that posted in Zulip right after this call. It's
and then
one
the
of
other
those.
question about that
Yeah.
is everybody that has signed up and is attending or paying to attend gets access to that, or does anybody get access to Dropbox?
So if I put the link in Zulip and it's set up that way that with the link you have access, then it would be anybody has access. If we want to do it, maybe, I don't know, Dave Hamill, if you have an opinion about that, the other option is for folks to use my email and send me a request, and then I can set up Dropbox access on a organization by organization basis. Which would you prefer, Dave?
It doesn't, I don't mind if anyone has it, so.
Rochelle, from an implementer's point of view, do you guys have a preference on it?
On the resources that you're making available, no. On the C-CDAs that are being shared before review, I kind of do. I like to see them go through the other EHR systems and get feedback. And I think other team members are probably, other implementers might feel the same way.
Might feel the same, sure.
Sure. Definitely anything that we need to prepare. I think if that's wide open, it might encourage others to participate. And I can share that link, when I do some social media stuff. But the folder where we're dropping files, I think you might need to get consensus from other people.
Yeah, I think that makes sense. And what I'll do is I'll put that information in the Zulip chat when I post that's the way it will be, and I will just include my email and let people know that they need to send me a request, and then I will give them just access to their own posting folder, and that would keep it private for folks, and then we can decide at the implementation-a-thon if we want to open that up a little bit more to make it easier for other people to be able to consume documents that have been posted.
That'd be great.
All right?
Appreciate
Thanks.
that.
That's a great suggestion. I want to jump into today's material. I just wanted to mention here, these are some of the handouts that we're going to be using in the workflow workshop. People will have an opportunity to really draw out the internal steps that their systems go through after they have received a document or queried for a document. It comes to their system, maybe via direct message or an XDSB query, even a FIRE query to pull back a document. We're trying to identify the actual internal steps that are associated with consuming or perhaps creating like on-demand type documents. We want to work together to create some views about the different possibilities and what that looks like. We do have a special visit from some folks from NCQA that are going to be joining us through the whole Connect-a-thon, but they'll be talking to us on Saturday about some of the advances in the use of C-CDA documents to support reducing the burden around quality measure sharing and some of the topics that are important to that. Before I get into today's, these were all slides from before that are still in the deck for people who want to catch up from before. Before I get into today's material, where we're going to cover some things on section time range and the other stuff that I talked about at the front edge of the agenda, are there any other questions right now that we want to handle from the stuff we've covered so far? Okie doke. So section time range. You see before you a little excerpt from the companion guide that balloted in July. And this describes a template. It's not new. It was developed with the last companion guide that came out a little over a year ago. But it's a template that's relatively new, and some people may not have been exposed to it yet. So we want to practice with that. And it's called Section Time Range, and it's something that can be used to communicate that business rules have been applied to constrain the amount of information that's represented in a section of the document. C-CDs all have at the header in the service event information, it has a time range that the document is covering. That's already stated there, but that can be a real long span of time. And to deal with the bloat or these documents being too large, we've had the business requirement of being able to constrain some sections at a narrower level of time. And so this is the template that's used to do that. To help people get ready to practice with using this, there is an example in Dropbox, and I wanted to show that to you. I think I might have put an example. Nope. I need to take you into an XML document that I have open here. There is an example out in the samples area in that resource folder that I showed you before, where it's called newsections.xml. And this is a document that I built just to demonstrate some of these new sections. So you'll see an example in the procedure section where there's some narrative text that actually says that the procedure information was limited to the past 7 years. And I may have, let's see, I may have rendered that document for you to see it today more easily. So here's your procedure section showing up, and it says that the procedure information is limited to the past 7 years. So this might be a C-CDA document that covers a great span of time. Let's go look at the service event information. Am I seeing that exposed? I see this has a, oh, it's not a C-CD. It is a, I think it's a progress note. That's why I'm not seeing that. So this progress note is using this section time range to just limit the amount of information that is reported in the procedure section. So that's what it looks like to expose it in the human readable. And then if you're interested in poking around with how that entry is constructed, besides reading the template in the companion guide, this document has an example of the discrete data entry. So that's what we have to help you out with section time range. Any questions on that one? The next thing that this is sort of a hodgepodge quarter that we're covering some of these a kind of a variety of different topics. One topic that came up from the Sequoia project, a very large C-CDA community, is around the issue of someday needing to be clearer about what template should be, what template conformances should really be asserted in documents. These template conformance assertions can be at the document level, at the section level. They can even be at the entry level. And there are a great many different templates that exist beyond Consolidated CDA Release 2.1. We've got back versions of Consolidated CDA. We've got things that go all the way back to something that was created by Hitsby years ago called C32, and other IHE templates that have been developed over time. And we're starting to see what I'll call a buildup of template conformance assertions, and it really gets to be kind of confusing. So Dee Dee Davis asked me to introduce this topic at Connect-a-thon so that we start talking about this, and the Sequoia community will be participating as well, and they're going to talk a little bit more about what they see coming in the future to be an evolutionary phase where eventually the use of some of these older templates may be phased out. And we want to talk about what it might mean for implementers to do some cleanup on the template assertions that they're using in their documents. That's what that topic will be about. Any questions on that one? Okay. During this quarter, I think this is Q4 on Saturday, if I recall correctly. We'll also be talking about narrative text linking. So I wanted to give you a little bit of a heads up about this. Many of the sample documents, in fact, all of the sample documents that are out there in the resource area give you really good examples of narrative text linking. This is something that's coming out as best practice guidance from the Commonwealth Care Quality community. The CDA Examples Task Force provides a lot of best practice guidance around this. You don't really find deep guidance around this in the base C-CDA R2.1 spec. It kind of alludes to the fact that this is possible, but we wanted to demonstrate for implementers where they could be going with best practice around linking information that's in the human readable with the associated discrete data representation of that information. So here you see an example from that same procedure section that I was just pointing to in the new sections document, but you can see content in the narrative that has been tagged with an ID that's used for text linking, and then used in the associated machine processable information that corresponds with that through this text element right here. So if you've ever heard that phrase or you want to begin practicing how you would implement that in some of your own documents and your own strategies for linking your discrete data with the human readable, that's guidance on how you can do that. And we'll be looking at where people are with this practice and what questions exist around it at Connect-a-Thon. Any questions there? Super. I'm going to zoom into another area then around something called multiple content views. And we have discussed this at previous implementation-a-thons. This is some crossover work that was done in the IHE community, which has a big group of C-CDA or CDA users over there looking at similar needs to work on how we render content. So this quarter is kind of heavy on the content consumer side. But you can see in this IHE, it's called MCV, Multiple Content Views specification. It's posted out in the resource area. You can find it there. But they've generated some specialized style tags that can be used to provide multiple different ways of looking at the rich content that's available in a CDA document. So they talk about options where after documents have been consumed, that there might be different views that are made available to your user community. You might want to see all of the content that's available in the document. They call that a full view. Or there might be just select concise views that focus in on certain areas, and that there are use cases where consumers may want to select and have available to them a variety of different views that help them get at this rich sort of portable database of information that comes in a CDA document. This specification also calls out some style tags that can be used to help with the rendering of different kinds of information. And I wanted to mention, in case you didn't know, that Alexander Hankett, who does the work on the HL7 CDA style sheet that is available as a tool to help with rendering, kind of example of how to render CDA documents, the latest release of that, which is called version 4.0.1, it's a beta release. It's really not a formal part of the standards kit, but it's available as a tool. If you want to take a look at practicing with this, if you use this latest version of the CDA style sheet, which of course I did include in the resource area Dropbox, you can get a feel if you play with some of these other tags. He has implemented magic in the style sheet that is sensitive to some of these other tags, along with the HTML-like tags that are available in CDA. So that's something that you should be aware of, and we'd like implementers to kind of explore, and then we'll get some feedback around what's being done on the creative side of rendering these documents using that kind of capability. Any questions about that? All right, I think I'm on to my my last topic for today. Is we would like to have a discussion during this quarter at the implementation of Thon to take a look at what implementers are doing around date rendering, date time rendering. We had a great presentation delivered at HIMSS last year and repeated through the Health Story Project that came from an organization called ADDI, the Association for Healthcare Documentation Integrity. This is a group it's largely an industry group that really represents the transcription space, people who have a lot of experience with creating medical documentation. And over the years, they've developed something called the Book of Style, which are industry best practices around consistently representing and representing medical documentation. And they got involved with looking at and analyzing what's being done now with digital documentation and where there are some challenges that are significant to the quality and consistency of medical documentation that's now coming to us through digital forms like C-CDA. I put the link to, I actually put the whole PowerPoint presentation from Health Story Project on that out in the resource area so you can check it out. But this most recent 4th edition of the style book is coming out in Amazon. It may be out already, or it's just on the verge of being released at the end of the summer. And one of the things that we wanted to zoom in on are some issues that they point out around date time information and inconsistency that's causing physicians a lot of challenge. This slide just shows a couple of examples that they point to where you can see medication information being rendered in really different ways. You've got dates that are in this month, day, year, time kind of representation, a different spelling out the month, the day, and the year. Some folks provide it where they put time range all in one field. Their examples really go on for about 3 or 4 pages where you can see things that are, all the way down to very precise, down to the 100th of a second, different strategies around separating these time intervals into different columns. And their main point is that this is very confusing for the consumers and the renderers of this information. And the conversation we want to have is to see where the community is at with thinking about this, discuss it as a group, and see if there are any best practices that are cropping up or emerging around how much precision should be represented, how to stylistically handle some of this, how do we get to greater consistency for folks that look at documents that are coming from a variety of different EHRs that are creating them, so that it's less confusing and so that it's really less dangerous from a patient safety point of view, that people might quickly look at this information and interpret it incorrectly or differently than what was really intended by the document creators. So I think this is going to be kind of an interesting topic. We have some time. I think I've gone through all of the topics that we're going to cover in this in this quarter. Let me take a quick zoom back and confirm just the coordinates of where we are. Yeah, this is Q4 on Saturday. So I've gone through all of the stuff that prepares you for the Saturday Q4 conversation. And I'm really interested in giving a little bit of time for you guys to maybe give me some feedback about not just this workflow exercise, but anything that we talked about today that would be helpful, like the stuff that Rochelle just brought up, or where you have questions, anything else that you think we ought to be looking at to help prepare ourselves for a real good interaction Q4 Saturday.
Hi, it's George. I think backdating data is going to be a problem for me, getting it into the system.
For the scenario, you mean creating something about Ted Levin that's in the past?
Historical, yeah.
What would make it easier?
And engineers are scripted in for me.
But I mean, in terms of like creating a scenario,
I can't go back.
George, you want to borrow one of ours?
Yeah, seriously. I mean, I can't like backdate lab results and put them in and by manually, so it's a little,
You know, so in the scenario, for example, I actually built the scenario so it's not specific to a year. So the dates that are in there kind of go from, they use the month and the day, so you can see time advancing, but they don't actually declare the year. I kind of picked 2018 and 2019 as a way to orient us, but would it be helpful if you did the same scenario, but you like envision it happening in real time, like right now, and then
if I come back every
a month
day
later,
differently.
Okay. Is
Depends
this a
on
challenge
what part
for
of the
anybody else?
application. Depends on what part of the application too.
Anybody else have that same problem that might have some ideas about how to handle this or make it more doable for everyone? George, I would say for your, and for anybody that does have this challenge, I think that the specific dates and times are going to be less material for this than what information you include in the problems and in the medications and social history, et cetera. So I would say for anybody that does have this same issue, that you could just fit the scenario into now, or whatever you would need to do, and then a different now that is a day or so, a day or more later. So it may not be feasible that, all that much activity would change in a day, but if it helps you to make your, to work with your demonstration systems, you just, the day that you decide to create your scenarios, like do something on Thursday and do some stuff, and then on Friday come back and make some of the changes that are asked for in the story, and there won't be points off on the dates not being right. We're really focused on trying to demonstrate that there's change over time and that there's change in these specific areas of the US CDI. Okay, that's how we can handle that. Anybody else, anything to share about others who are preparing to come? I'm always searching for people who might be willing to say, yes, I'm coming prepared to create documents. Anybody on the phone today who is in a position of committing to doing that?
This is Rachel. I'll speak up since I'll be first. We will be prepared to create documents. Our teams review the the data that needs to be collected. We haven't started entering it. We might have some questions for the next call about the data that needs to be recorded to support that. We'll be creating, but we'll also be consuming C-CDAs for our fire server as well as for CQM solutions. And we do have a way to our quality measure application. We also have a way to take in that C-CDA and assign it to a patient in our solution. So we'll do that as well. We
awesome.
do parse the data. We parse problems, medication, allergies for that reconciliation process, but we don't pull it into EHR. It's just available in the database, so you can see what was parsed because we're not in EHR. But okay.
Excellent, excellent. That's good. Anybody else? I'm going to start looking at names that I know here. Let's see. I heard from George. Did you guys? So if we work out this issue of the handling the time, you guys, Allscripts will be in a good position of supporting some content creation, document creation.
Well, I haven't been approved yet, and Emma's like fire lady, so I'm not sure.
Okay. Anybody else on the line?
I'm still working on cloning myself, Lisa.
Oh, good,
but
Emma.
If I get cloned.
We could start some kind of a tradition like they have between, I think, like the Air Force and the Army at the football games. You know, they go and they steal people from the other side and they take cadets and bring them to the other, to work in the other branch of the military for a year and eventually return them. We could invent a process that we can come and steal you away and bring you to the CDA track.
It was kind of funny because just Jeff is on the Fire R4 call right at this time, the Argonaut Fire R4. And just when you were talking about time in your previous slide, he pinged me about time. Apparently they're talking about time over there as well.
Excellent, excellent. Well, I do predict that all of our issues are going to be getting more similar and more similar all the time, whether it's, you know, value set stuff or, you know, problem concerns, and all of the US CDI is, whether you represent it in a CDA format or you represent it in a FHIR format, we're going to end up with all the same set of issues to look at. So we do hope that the two communities continue to work very closely together and more closely together over time. Okay, I think I don't need to, if everybody's quiet on the phone today, if there aren't any more obvious questions, I took the action item of getting some things up in Zulip, so you'll have access to Dropbox. Dave shared my email so that we can implement this tighter security around the way people can access their Dropbox boxes for posting their samples. And I'll get that information out. It's a good excuse for you to go to chat.fire.org and find your way to that C-CDA IAT stream so that you can be in the community there. We're really encouraging people to try and use that channel a little bit more. And the next prep session, I forgot to advance my little box here, is going to happen on Wednesday, September 4th. Summer will be over. You'll all be back from Labor Day, and we'll be starting to talk about the approaches that we're going to use to have conversations about basic provenance. There is an implementation guide out that is under ballot right now. If you haven't read that, even if you didn't sign up for the ballot pool, as an HL7 member, you can still go to the ballot area and you can download the PDF file. It's not a huge document. I don't know, 15 pages or something like that, pretty reasonable size. And take a look at the material that's been put forth around basic provenance information. We'll be using that as a springboard for our conversation. So it helps for you to be familiar with the material that's there. And we're hoping to get some good participation across the CDA and FHIR communities to come together on Sunday morning. It's Q1 on Sunday to just talk about some of these emerging issues around representation of provenance information. What does it mean in CDA, and how is our thinking being shaped by FHIR as we consider use of the provenance resource and even, kind of conversion back and forth between information that comes in a CDA document and makes its way into a system that may have a FHIR API for retrieving it. How do these things fit together? That's what we'll be, we really, next time, we'll be shaping the conversation. What questions need to be asked? What kinds of things do you guys want to talk about? I will have Brett Marquardt present. He was the author of the Basic Provenance IG that we have out as an informational document right now. He'll be joining us for sure Sunday morning to bring his insight, and that's what we'll be getting ready for. That's it. We're almost down to the wire. 2 weeks out, we have one more session that will happen on the Wednesday right before we head to Connect-a-thon. And as I am saying that, I am realizing that I may have a conflict on September 11th because there is a FHIR IG development class that's happening in Atlanta that I was recently enrolled in. And so, Dave, I may need to work with you. I guess you guys should stay tuned to see how we're going to handle this Wednesday, September 11th class. I'll just give you a heads up that there might be some scheduling issues going on there, but stay tuned on Zulip, and we'll keep you posted through email as well. Any other last-minute questions before we conclude for today? Thanks so much for your time. We really look forward to seeing you all in Atlanta, and I will see you on September 4th. Thank you very much.
Very good. Take care.
Bye.
Okay.